It's another bright and early morning, and we're going to be in the office getting all sorts of pod stuff done today. Still in the middle of my move, still dealing with a whole bunch of crazy, but at least I have my magic mind shot to kind of get me through the day. It's definitely, I'm starting to take it in the afternoon just as like a little bit of a boost, especially once like the morning caffeine is wearing off, and that has been beyond helpful. So, and Magic Mind is once again, I'm so glad they reached out to me. Honestly, when they reached out, I was so excited to work with them, and I'm so excited to hopefully continue work with them. But I have a code. It is Hot Mess Espresso 50. You get a bunch of these little guys, and we're just gonna start the day off right. Welcome back, guys. As always, Hot Mess Espresso is beyond proudly sponsored by 502 Media. We have Brittany Kongkran on the podcast today, who is also a podcast host. And if you've been around for longer than 5 seconds, you know I love me a fellow podcast host. What is up, Brittany?
Hey, how are you?
Good. So in her mind, I love the title.
Thank you.
I
Thank
love a
you.
good catchy title. How did all of that come about?
You know, that's a really good question. In her mind came about in my mind at a very great time. It was day 4 actually of my stay at a mental health institution. Yeah, I was sitting there in my plastic bucket seat without much else to do because they give you like quite a bit of reflection time when you're in a mental health institution.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just me, my composition notebook, surrounded by a community of other people. Was there with my crayons, my color pencils, and I thought, you know what? I have all this journaling time. What am I going to write about? What is it that I should really be using this time to do? And I thought to myself, you know what? It's now or never. I have this quality time where I could be journaling every day, or I could be scripting that podcast that I've been thinking about doing for a long time. And right now I've got a lot of things on my mind. I think it's now. I'm going to choose now.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
How has that evolved from literally being an idea in a notebook to now?
It's evolved very beautifully actually, because like being there and being in that moment and with that audience, it was really quite beautiful because I thought to myself, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do something and I'm going to make it meaningful. I'm going to make it meaningful. I'm going to make it valuable, and it's going to be valuable to myself, but valuable to a community of people that matter to me. And I was surrounded by them, at the time. So I was right there in a mental health hospital, and I had a really great audience. A funny story that, about that audience. So I was there in week 1. So I ended up staying in the mental hospital for about 2 weeks. And I was there in week 1 and talking about, okay, so I think I'm going to make this podcast. And it was ambitious, to be there at a time like that. Me and my composition notebook. Hey guys, I think I'm going to make a podcast. That's what I'm going to do. But I had so much supportive energy. I tell you, there's folks that are going to support your dreams. It's people that are surrounded by you at the time. And so I had a really great audience of people listening to different iterations of my scripting so far. How does this sound? Does this sound like a good opener? And so on, of me describing this it's now, and now's the time, and here's why I'm doing this, and and they're like, yeah, it sounds really great. So I start feeling better, and I get out of the hospital. Well, I'm back the next week, because I end up getting a bipolar diagnosis, and as I wasn't diagnosed at the time, but then I get my diagnosis. I'm back in the hospital because now I have a diagnosis and I'm ready to get some treatment. I run into a few of the same people and meet a few more. This time I've launched the podcast. I've actually completed 1 episode, so I'm debuting my podcast.
Hey, we love that.
To a host of new people. But it was pretty awesome because I've moved a level up. So the first time I was there, I'm on kind of like maximum security, kind of area. And then I'd moved up a bit too, where it's a bit more independent. independent living kind of space. And, we're able to use the internet and, well, not use the internet necessarily, but able to go on YouTube on the TV. So the community space had
Right.
still had composition notebooks because I wrote episode 2 the next week when I was in the hospital.
Mhm.
But I was able to debut episode 1 of the podcast there in the hospital to the audience. So, and it's called It's Now or Never. Yeah. So that, so that was quite beautiful to get the reactions to them,
Mhm.
from them, and get some real feedback. But episode 2 was called "Does That Make Me Crazy?" And that episode I wrote the second week that I was in the mental hospital,
Right.
and it it really meant something to me because that week, being on a new ward in the hospital, I actually got to participate in like AA meetings if I wanted to.
Mhm.
And I got to be exposed to different levels of people who were at the hospital for different reasons. And it was just more of therapies and just really being exposed to people who had their lives interrupted.
Right.
It was very different. My life had been interrupted the week before, but it was in a very different way. I was in the
Mhm.
hospital from having a psychotic episode that was brought on by mania, but that felt different. But this week, I was much more lucid. I was here fully voluntarily, but in a different place. It felt more like an interruption, and I was there for treatment, and so were these people. And so, being able to fully participate like with them and observe the things they were going through, to talk to people. So I was in there like kind of conducting like mini interviews
Right.
with the other people that were there, and they came up with this really brilliant episode. Does That Make Me Crazy? Made many commitments to them. I was able to like talk to folks about it. They're like, do you mind being on my episode like with me, like
Right.
doing these interviews and everything? So it was really cool.
Yeah, that is kind of to backtrack just a touch because obviously you just talked about your experience in a mental hospital. Like I have personally done partial, which is not quite like inpatient, but it's like all day and then you go home kind of thing, and then very intensive group therapy. Because, the brain space was not well, especially in 2019 and then 2020. We all have been like, oh, I need a grippy sock vacation. A 72-hour cycle sounds like, really nice right now. What is the reality of actually being an inpatient?
Yeah. Well, first off, kudos to you, for taking that time, because it's a it's a commitment, it's a
Mm-hmm.
step. There's such a stigma around it. It's so
There
taboo,
is.
going anywhere near it, saying the words out loud, so
It
no
it was
matter how
it was
much
actually
time you
kind of
spent there.
it was kind of scary saying that out loud because like only a few people knew that I've ever been in partial hospitalization and then like intensive group therapy. But yeah, I was very close to the edge and I was like, I don't think I'm going to, but like I don't really know. And my therapist was like, why don't we try partial? And it was a lot. And what I was gonna say earlier is it takes a lot of strength for you to go back and be like, no, I need to like sit in here and sit with myself and figure this the hell out.
And it
For
was
sure.
hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was hard.
No, it's
Yeah.
not easy.
Especially knowing, packing a bag and knowing where you're going. Packing a bag and knowing where you're going. And to your question, packing a bag, knowing that many of these items they're probably not going to give me once I get in there,
Mhm.
because that is a reality, of it. For one thing, because I was at the Brook Hospital, the environment there, it's a caring atmosphere, for
Mhm.
one. They realize that no one wants to be there.
Yeah.
The people that are there, they're there for a reason. They're there to get care, and
Mhm.
it's not a place where many people want to be. But a lot of folks that are there have no choice but to be there. Some of them, and everyone's coming from. Some people are coming directly from home, but some people were picked up directly. There was a gentleman there who had just left directly from his job. It's like you can tell by the way people are dressed that when I say interrupted, like literally their life was
Yeah.
interrupted. So wherever their situation happened, they're still dressed like that, like when they arrive.
Yeah.
Um, and the reality is that healing isn't going to start on day one from the time you get there. There's shock. You still have to get acclimated to the fact that you're there. They're going to remove your items from you, sanitize you, to an extent. So there's no cell phones. There's a television, so you can see some glimpses of outside world. There you do get to spend some time outside, but it's not going to be much, time outside, but enough for you to get some healthy fresh air. Um, there's food, and things like that. It's not what we've seen on TV, like the padded rooms. It's
Yeah.
not that type of it's not prison, to an extent, no chain and balls, but there is definitely a sanitization, to it, but at the same time, there's an atmosphere of healing and of wellness that's there. You spend
Mhm.
most of the day in coaching sessions, in therapy sessions. There are therapists that are there all day long. So it's rotating, whether we're doing music therapy or someone's coming in to talk to us. Most of the activities happen inside a community room. So you stay
Mhm.
inside a room, and then different therapists will come in to do activities with us. Like I mentioned, like AA happens, but things similar to like an AA,
Mhm.
happen as well. But very therapeutic. It feels good. I'll say that. There's nothing happened to me there that made me feel bad.
Right.
That made me feel bad. That made me feel shameful. About what had happened to me. I felt very prepared to face the outside, when I left,
Mhm.
very much of um, preparing me to leave, mainly, and then the time that's there, it's probably more scary thinking about coming than actually being there.
Right.
I have to say that, but it was but even still, it was a tough decision to go. It was still a tough decision to go. I was able to use the phone kind of whenever I wanted to. That
Oh,
was a difference.
yeah.
Outside of therapy sessions, they allowed me to use the phone whenever I wanted to, to be able to call family and friends, and things. So it was really nice that you can have a support system, like that.
Right. Did you feel better prepared the second time you went, versus the first?
Oh, definitely. Oh, definitely. Especially because the first time that I went, I was coming off of a psych hold. So there was,
Mm,
then you hear kind of some laughter in my voice, because like looking back on it, I can kind of laugh at it, even though
right.
it was definitely not funny. But I was coming off of a psych hold, a 72-hour psych hold, and where I had full blown acute psychosis. That is my first that I know of full blown psychosis that had come from a bipolar manic episode. But I
Mhm.
didn't know that I had bipolar,
Right.
as of yet. And this manic episode had led me to leave my apartment in the middle of the night with my pajamas on, wandering the streets. And thank goodness the police found me, but I didn't have my license. I didn't have my license, had my cell phone, couldn't say much about how or why I ended up where I ended
Oh,
up. And so police took me to, I ended up going into Norton, the Norton Hospital. But, when you present that way, don't know much about yourself. I had fallen down. I was like, running at some point. I had fallen down, scratches on my legs. I didn't looked well enough, healthy enough where they knew I wasn't an unhoused person,
mhm.
but I couldn't, I obviously was in trouble,
Right.
at the same time. So but then was still experiencing some psychosis. So I end up on a psych hold, and then end up at the Brook Hospital, from there.
Mhm.
But of course, that isn't a great way to enter a psych hospital. So a completely different
Right.
experience from what I ended up from week 1 to week 2 with going there. How I behaved, while I was on my psych hold was not that great. I was um, not cooperating with the doctors. They didn't know
Right.
if I was on drugs or if anything, because I refused to allow them to take any blood from me or anything. But I was upset. You know, a lot of it, I knew I was in a bad
Right.
situation. I'm like, I've showed up, no identification. I don't look good. I'm not in a bad place. Well, not in a good place. At some point, I gotten separated from my cell phone. So now I've showed up at the hospital. I have no cell phone. I don't know about you, but I cannot recall anyone's phone number except for like my 89-year-old grandparents. That's the only
I got
number
my
I know.
sister. That's it.
Man, yeah. So I'm like, this does not look good. I'm literally out of my mind. Don't know anyone's phone number. Don't have a cell phone. Don't have any ID. I'm in my pajamas in the wee hours of the morning, barefoot with scrapes on my legs. I'm bad off.
All the
Really
boxes are
bad
checked
off.
off.
Yeah.
All of them.
Yeah. Absolutely everything. Yeah, so it was as bad as it sounds. Yeah, so it was a one-way ticket to the psych ward, and it was a different ticket to the psych ward, much different than the very next week when I drive myself, in fully dressed in my Acura, in here,
Hmm.
completely different experience. So yeah, that was yeah, that was a very different experience.
Yeah. What made you decide to go back once you got the bipolar diagnosis? Was that an immediate, I need to absolutely go back? Or did you sit with it for a couple of days and you're like, I just think this is the best way to jumpstart treatment?
You know, actually, the same day that I got the official diagnosis, I wasn't feeling well. They When I was released from the hospital the first time, I was feeling better
Hmm.
than I was. I'd come out of the psychosis,
Right.
but I wasn't feeling. I was feeling drastically better than I had been. And I think my symptoms have just kind of leveled out some. But I had an appointment to meet with my doctor. That's what they do. They say, well, follow up with your doctor.
Hmm.
And they had taken me off some medications. Turns out I was taking Quilbry, which Quilbry I was taking for my ADHD. But it's a black box for bipolar disorder.
Oh,
But I still hadn't formally been diagnosed yet because I hadn't saw my doctor.
right.
But at the follow-up appointment, when I went to visit my doctor, he officially diagnoses me with bipolar disorder. And sitting in his office, I was not feeling good. Like when I say I wasn't feeling good, I was. When people say hearing voices, that's it's always kind of hard. So it's like, where do you hear voices? Do you hear them outside
Right.
of your body or so on? And so I don't like to use that term necessarily. I would
Right.
say my head was busy. Like
Mm.
it was very busy
Yeah.
going on, and which is not usual for me. And
Right.
so that was definitely, I'm definitely have not returned to normal.
Hmm.
There's some activity happening here that's not normal for me.
Right.
So there was that. And then I was still feeling very jumpy, still excited, speaking quickly, writing quickly, and which this is still mania. And he told me, in like sitting in his office, and he said, and actually, I don't believe that you're well. Like in this moment, you
Right.
seem like you may not be well. I think that you're still experiencing some mania, and I think that you've been experiencing mania for probably some time. That's what I hadn't mentioned is that um, leading up to the psychotic episode, that
Hmm.
I had, the like acute psychosis, there were several things that had happened to me that I thought were just, I don't know, changes in my personality, or I guess that I was making. But
Hmm.
no, this was mania. Like I had quit my 6-figure job on a whim.
Oh,
Um, yeah, I quit on a whim, but and this is where balance comes in. I quit on a whim, but gave a 3-week notice.
so we're responsively manic.
Yeah, yeah. and had no plans whatsoever.
Mhm.
Like it, and had no plans, no reason either, besides the fact that I was bored out of my mind. Yeah, that I just didn't want to do it. Like that was mainly it. That there was just something higher and better for me. It wasn't in alignment. That was it. Like literally.
Mhm.
And that's what I told my boss.
I
Yeah,
mean,
that's
valid.
yeah. Yeah, and it was, but who does that? Apparently I
Right.
do. When I'm manic, apparently
Right.
that's what I do. And these were things that he my doctor, who in a sense was very much like my therapist, as well. He recounted this to me because we had spoken about it in my last session. He said, "I see now that this was mania and this
Right.
is bipolar." And I still don't think that you're feeling very well. So there's a medicine that I want to put you on. I want to get you on this medicine immediately. And, and there's another doctor that I want to refer you out to. And, let's get you on track. And so I said, okay, I was really receptive. And I left his office, went to the fresh market, and was just processing everything that he was talking
Right.
about. Got me some food for dinner. And then by like 7 o'clock that evening, I went home and, like things, my vision was getting very blurry. Um, like I was not very well. And that's, but later on, I called him and I told him, I said, I don't know what's happening to me, but I feel like the psychosis is coming back, like, because I'm getting to see, like, I'm just started to feel very, very unwell, like just in my physicality, like something is going on. And
Mhm.
so, and I said, but I refuse to go back on a psych hold. I said, I don't want to end up at the hospital like that I don't want to do. Um, what else can I do?
Right.
And he said, would you agree to go back to, would you agree to check yourself back into the brook? And I said, you know what? Yep, I will do that. I can do that. I will do that. Yeah, it felt, and that, going back there, it felt very comfortable. It felt very comfortable. I was glad. I was thankful to have that as an option. I truly was. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure. Now, you had mentioned earlier the ADHD diagnosis. As someone who has also been diagnosed way late in life, um, what was that like for you when you kind of like look back? And because I know we had talked off camera that like you didn't think you had it because someone close to you had it, and you were like, well,
Hmm.
that's not me. I'm very the polar opposite. What was that like when you got that diagnosis and you realized that there are so many facets of ADHD?
Yeah. Yeah. And originally, I everything I've ever heard about ADHD, like from the time that, in the mostly when you hear about ADHD, you hear about little kids, like
Yes.
anyway, we heard about that. And they're like, oh, and they won't sit down. And they're, jumping all over the place, or they've had problems in school. And those are the bookmarkers.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not me, like the hyperactivity. At
Mm-hmm.
least I think that's not me, the hyperactivity. But there's that. But then, with adults, we know that that's not how ADHD, displays, like at all, especially not like with women.
Yeah.
But my I have an identical twin sister actually, and my identical twin sister has ADHD,
Mm-hmm.
and she's been diagnosed with ADHD for a long time. And she
Mm-hmm.
had, in her diagnosis, and with her having ADHD, she has been like nothing like me.
Yep.
Like for a long time, I was like, no, we're not the same,
Right.
in that sense. Like I don't see that,
Mm-hmm.
but in so many ways, we're very similar,
Mm-hmm.
but I went to a doctor, and this doctor that I went to, she said, well, a would you would you mind, like going through the ADHD test like yourself? And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, well, okay, all right, let's go through the assessment. We go through the assessment, and I actually came through the assessment, and I myself have ADHD, and some of the things that she pointed out to me were fidgeting. And I don't notice that I'm a fidgeter necessarily, But some of the things that I do, I constantly need to be moving my hands.
I'm literally over here like just doing
Do you
this
do
because
that?
it's like I have to do something with my hand.
Yeah, yeah, and I didn't even notice that. But one thing that I do really bad in the car, which she didn't see this, but I know that I do it. And when she said fidgeting, I'm like, how did you know that? But I move my rearview mirror like 100 times in the car. Like every time I shift,
Mm,
I'm like moving it like all the time. Yeah, but that was one of the things that she pointed out. One of the things that she mentioned to me that really kind of pulled it together to me, where I'm like, okay, all right, well, maybe these two things can't exist together, is
hmm
that she said, it's possible to be high functioning. Like you are a high functioning
yes.
person with ADHD, So, when you make lists, because I do that a lot, I make lists about everything. She said, making lists and keeping your notes, all of that. She said, those are your coping mechanisms. And that's how you've been able to make it. You've been training your brain all of this
hmm
time. And, that's your way. You do that too.
Yeah, yeah. I literally like when everyone's like, "Oh, it's so nice that you like take notes for these prep calls." I'm like, "Yeah, because let me tell you, the second I hit end call, whoop, right out of my head. Like I have to take notes and I have to take clear notes. Otherwise, I'm just like, I don't know what I meant by that. But yeah, I've got to-do lists under to-do lists under like I've got the to-do list with the sub thing and then this. I literally look so type A, but I'm type A.5 because I can't be on time to save my life. And a couple other things that make me type B, but you look at like my lists and my planners and you would think I am the most type A extra anal retentive person ever. And
And
I'm
you
not.
color code too.
Yes. Closet's color coded. It's a problem.
Oh, but that is a survival technique,
Yeah.
and that's it's really it's really something how that works. And she talked about that, and she said, being high functioning, there's nothing wrong with that. And she said
Mm-hmm.
it's really a form of acceptance, accepting who you are, and just building. You've come to build that into your personality. And I was glad that she said that. And
Yeah.
it's been part of my like personal narrative, like to myself, with
Mm-hmm.
ADHD, with bipolar. I'm like, you know what, let me embrace that. Let me embrace that, that these two things can coexist. I could
Right.
be all of these things at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Where there's some things that, like, obviously, we've done a lot of research on women in ADHD and the pipeline of very gifted in school and, like, able to like read a ton and this, that, and the third, and then burning out in college pipeline is like literally a huge indicator now. But were there things looking back that you were like, oh, that is raging ADHD that like obviously we had no idea because we thought ADHD was bouncing off the walls and like only in boys.
Yeah, 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 definitely. Well, for one, you talk about like the never being on time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, can't do it. Can't do
Yeah.
it. Can't do it. I've intentionally, you know what? And actually, I say can't do it, but what has worked for me, I had a job. One of the jobs that I had, they had like flex time. It said, be at work anytime between like 7 and 9. That was golden. That was golden. I'm like, you
Yeah.
know what? Give me that. Give me that autonomy. Having some autonomy,
Mm-hmm.
and things like really helped. Or if I was able to set if I was able to set a time myself, like that helps
Yeah.
a lot with things. And which you can't always do that with school, but in college
Right.
you can, like leaning into, and so for me, like leaning into, like, and now understanding when I work best,
Mm-hmm.
like I'm not a super morning person, but I like mornings, but I like
Mm-hmm.
mornings more casually for me, so
Same.
yeah,
I'm not a morning person, but every time I like happen to be up and it's 7 a.m. and the birds are chirping and you get that like golden sun in and you're just like, oh, why don't I do this more often? It's like, because that's not you. It's just not
yeah,
you. I'm
it's
a
like I
slow
could be
morning
up,
girl.
but that doesn't mean I need to be somewhere at that time. It's like,
Mm,
no, it's like that means that's my relaxed time, but not time for me
yeah.
to go and be somewhere, but like when it was like in college and stuff, I didn't know better. Like, you know, 'cause they
Yeah.
tell you like book early classes and things like that. And like, so I fell into that same trap of, oh yeah, I'm going to book the early classes because they tell you to. So I
Mm-hmm.
didn't do well. Like early in college, I didn't do well. I ended up being an adult student, and I didn't graduate college until I was like 30. Yeah. I ended up being an adult student.
Yeah.
And like going back and being an adult student. And then that's when I graduated college. And then now I'm in grad school and I know better. You know, I can
Yeah.
do it's different, you know, now, like being a full blown adult, and I know
Yeah.
the ins and outs of things. But yeah, I did not, did not know. I hadn't learned any of the ADHD lessons. I fully felt the burn as soon as I was on my own and didn't have the structure of like grade school and all that. It all came crashing.
That was the thing. Like, we thrive on structure. If we have to create our own structure, 9 times out of 10, it's not going to happen. So, and I know you know this being a podcast guest or a podcast host, creating your own structure within that and creating a schedule so that like things actually get done and you're not scrambling at 3 in the morning when you have an episode that's due out at 5 a.m. is like a personal kind of hell. And you're just like, I need to do better. I need to do better. And like, for some reason, you get that like executive dysfunction where you can't. And it's, I'm over here, like, I have no idea how I'm 2 years into this and I haven't literally like lost my mind. I think it's parasite at this
Wow.
point. But it's just, that's the thing. Like, that structure we thrive on. If we have to create our own structure, good freaking luck. Good
Yeah,
luck.
yeah. It definitely takes practice. It takes
Mm-hmm.
practice. It can be done, but it takes
They can.
practice. Yeah, things I definitely didn't know like back then, and now it's again embracing what I know and like just building it in like to who I am
Mm-hmm.
and giving myself that autonomy, like just knowing this is what I'm good at, this is what I'm not so good at, and embracing that.
Yeah, you have to embrace it. And like, that's the thing. I've embraced more of the positives of ADHD. I like, granted, this is sometimes a personal hell I wish on nobody when it comes to ADHD
Mm,
at times, but you know, people with ADHD can 9 times out of 10, those are the creative minds. Those are the ones that can get a million things done. And we're like, how do you do it? And it's like, I have no idea, but like, there's something malfunctioning in my brain that actually is like working
mm.
out, you know, and just being able to juggle a million things and having the creativity and the drive, because that hyper focus should be studied in a lab. Like,
Oh my gosh,
when we
yeah.
get hooked on something, it is like woof. And that's how I realized you know, in my early 30s, like after I'd been diagnosed, that reading an entire book series in a week was not just, oh, she likes to read. That was my hyper focus of the week because I
Yeah.
couldn't put the book down. I'm like, oh, that's what that was.
Yeah, yeah, and those are superpowers in that,
They
you know,
are.
and everybody doesn't have that. I just
Mm-hmm.
did a podcast episode about that, about you know, the superpowers of ADHD and like bipolar and just being neurodivergent a few weeks ago, because you know that creative spark, you know, that happens, you know,
Mm-hmm.
that is like a prized, it's a
Oh,
like a prized possession, you know, when we
yeah.
get that. And not everybody has that. It's
Nope.
a beauty, one of the only beauties you know, that comes
Right.
with the diagnosis like this. But it's
Mm-hmm.
something that should be embraced, you know, when we have it. Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's a joy being a creative. I'll
Yeah.
take it. Yeah, when it
Right.
happens, when those sparks happens, I sit and wait for them when it happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, with bipolar, it's, you know, called mania. You know, when that happens, but it's the spark that brought me my podcast, and that's what I have to
Yep.
remember, that like too, like yeah, when people say, you know, so what good came out of something, I have to stop and think like, you know what, yeah, it brought me my podcast, brought me some life learnings, you know,
Mm-hmm.
discovery, self discovery, you know, so there's some good that comes from it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, my borderline diagnosis is why this podcast exists, because
Mm,
I wanted to be the person that I needed when I first got, because like nobody really knew what borderline was when I got diagnosed, like what, 8 years ago, and 7 or 8. So that started the blog, and then I got with the Times, with the podcast. Shout out to my best friend Justin, because this podcast wouldn't exist if he hadn't been on my ass for 3 years straight. I'm not even kidding. Like, and then I found what I was meant to do, which is this. And I wouldn't have been able to do that without that diagnosis. And granted, that is, again, a personal hell I wish on nobody. But that is the one like really good thing that has come out of this, is the podcast. And it's insane how many people that I know like you that have been through some shit that they're like, and that's the only reason I have this podcast. That is because that is like what I'm meant to do, who I'm meant to be because of this. And it's like really, really nice to see people kind of, I guess, making the best out of their circumstances.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which brings me to my next question. How are you handling the mania and the, just knowing when a psychosis episode is coming on?
Yeah.
I'm over here like I know you've used both, and I don't want to be like that person that gets it wrong, but like I didn't have
Oh
time to
no,
like
it's okay.
sneakily
It's
write it down.
okay.
But how are you handling those now? Are you more aware when they come on? Like how do you handle those? Because I know there's no getting rid of the mania.
Yeah. Yeah, there isn't. And that's I'm trying to watch for it, like mainly. It's a discovery, and that's what I'm trying to embrace is that knowing that every day I have to live.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a part of it. I have to live, I have to learn and live through it. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the only way that I'm going to learn. Right now, I feel good. I feel healthy. I haven't had any more episodes, and I have to tell myself that psychosis isn't something that's bound to happen.
Right.
That isn't something that has to happen. Like with the illness, it just happened. That time, and part of it was due to the drug that I was taking, the Colbury, which I'm not taking that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't supposed to be taking that with bipolar, and we didn't know that at the time, and that's been
Right.
corrected. So it's kind of calming myself in some kind of ways to think, okay, this was an extreme circumstance that doesn't have to happen again, because that was incredibly scary.
Right. I can only imagine how terrifying
Yeah,
that was.
it's incredibly scary. And so, telling myself that was an extreme, and now let's, back away from the extreme part to now here's another thing that was not normal, and that
Mm-hmm.
was not normal for me before, and that was the mania. And now this can happen again. Let's think about that, because that too caused a lot. You quit your job. You did,
Mm-hmm.
you did a lot of stuff while you were manic, and that can happen again. So let's, process through that. So I am a person who believes in medication, so I'm medicated,
Yeah.
so anybody that's out there, anybody that's out there that is medication hesitant, one of the things that I push big is gene site testing. I talked
Oh,
about this.
yes.
Yeah. Have you done gene site testing? Are
I
you
have
familiar with it?
not, but I know that it is incredibly important, especially when it comes to figuring out what medications are just not going to work
Yes.
with your body.
Oh my gosh, yes. Because I'm someone who, I'm like, look, I don't want to be a lab rat.
Mm-hmm.
It's
I've done the lab rat thing. It's not fun.
No, it isn't. And for people who are medication hesitant, which I've been one of those people, and or if you're just kind of at crunch time too, like I was really in need of something that was going to work for me, was going to work for me quickly, because I was experiencing so many symptoms. The fact that I had gene site testing done was that was exactly what I needed, because we were able to pull that chart out and quickly identify medication that was going to have the best likelihood of working for me quickly, based on my genetic makeup. So anyone who is out there and has access to that, my insurance paid for it, by the way, get that done. If you're able to do that,
Yep.
ask your doctor about it, because it's well worth it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so my medication has been helping me. Getting a doctor that you trust, that's important,
Huge.
as well. Yeah, because we've all been there before, where we've been in an office and felt like we just weren't heard.
Mm-hmm.
That's not fun, because there's nothing that will make you shut down and shut up more quickly than talking to someone and it seems like they're just not hearing you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a feeling that you should have when you're at the doctor's office, trying to talk to somebody about your care. So those things have really helped me, and they've helped me so far and put me in a position to where if I do feel some cracks coming in, I feel like I'm prepared with the right team, the right resources to where I can get some help quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that's kind of the best position I can be in, at this point, which, which is all I can hope for. Besides that, I'm a person of faith. Like, so I pray
Mm-hmm.
about it, I
Yeah.
pray about it and hoping that the universe has some really good things in store for me. Yeah, that don't include me up on any more psych holds. Right now, I hope I've learned the lesson from
Yeah.
that. We've seen all we needed to see, and I can move on from that piece.
Yeah. Yeah. So where can we find In Her Mind, and where can we follow you and follow where you're going next?
Yes, yeah. So In Her Mind is available right now on Apple Podcasts and Podbean. Yeah, we are. I'm usually releasing episodes right now. I'm on a bi-weekly cadence, but
Mm-hmm.
check it out because when I feel inspired, I go ahead and share what's on my mind. So it could be weekly drops as well. I am well, and actually, In Her Mind is available. You can follow on Threads, you can follow on Instagram and Facebook as well, or you can send emails if you feel inspired to share anything to the In Her Mind podcast at gmail.com.
Perfect. Yeah. Brittany, thank you so much for coming on and honestly being so vulnerable, because talking about inpatient stays and bipolar and ADHD it's becoming a little more normalized, but it's not normalized enough yet. So I just beyond appreciate you coming on and just being so raw about it.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, the more practice that we have at being authentic and just genuine people, the better. And so I'm
Yes.
just realized for this opportunity.
Yes.